next. I guess in all of this here, I do more analysis than anything else. I don't get too caught up emotionally with whether something is good or something's bad. I see the initiatives, and the logic seems to be sound. But before we get into it, the past is responsible for the present, and the present is responsible for the future. And if we want to understand what happened in New Brunswick, we go back to Confederation. Prior to Confederation, the Atlantic provinces of New Brunswick was economically doing very, very, very well. Well, somebody come up with the selling ticket, join Confederation. Hey, that was great, that was cool, that was far out. Let's get on board. Well, it turned out that it worked against the Maritimes because all of a sudden they introduced trade tariffs that benefited Ontario, put us at a disadvantage. And since Confederation to now, it's been a downhill battle. During that same historical period, we have some oligarchs that's now entered the game plan. And, you know, they control most of the economy here. Just on the increase in corporate income taxes across Canada, on tax havens, $80 billion of corporate taxes is going offshore. Canada's budget, the Canadian deficit, what is it, 30 million? Oh, geez, if we're able to collect a third of that, that would eradicate the Canadian budget. The other thing that I also see, you mentioned it, Roger, with the small businesses, you know, injecting a little bit of money, whether it's through tax deductions or whatnot, to help them along to work as an incentive, which makes sense. But related to that, are you doing anything for the average Canadian or the average New Brunswicker? Because I think this young gentleman was kind of on the right track here. I think you're almost getting Canadian on me. Is investing, putting money on, and Justin Trudeau mentioned it, by putting money into people's pocket will encourage spending, not taking it out. So when we add all these reductions and all the other plans that are in place, how much money will the average New Brunswicker have in his or her pocket at the end of the year? If they have less, they're not going to be spending. If they have more, they're going to be spending. And of course, there's that relationship. If you can get people to spend, then the small businesses benefit. You see that whole relationship. And like, I think you're on the right track, but you're not, you know, quite there. You know, I'm going to say something that's going to probably shock a lot of people in this room because of public attitude. But income assistance, you know, throw in a few dollars for income assistance. And an example of that, we have out of Steve Horstman's area. While I grew up there, I'm 62 years old. I come to New Brunswick in 1960. So I've seen the whole development of Barker's Point, Devon, and whatnot. And at one time, there was a high population of low-income earners. But what you also see, you've seen a lot of little convenience stores all stuck up. But over the years, as this new strategy came in to spread low-income people, you know, throughout the city, what we started seeing was that these little convenience stores were closing down. So what I'm getting at is that that's an economy within itself. And if you can inject money into people's pocket, they're going to spend, and they're going to help the small businesses, you know, keep going. Another point, just I'm going to wrap up very shortly, is something that a lot of people probably don't understand is the relationship. Again, I think it was you who mentioned about the banks, or somebody had mentioned about the banks paying well one. I won't get into it. There's the fractional reserve banking system, what kind of scam that is. But back in 1970, the Bank of Canada was the bank that was a prime lender. And throughout someone's infinite wisdom, they decided to shift that to, I think it was the Royal Bank, the Bank of Montreal, and then the Bank of Nova Scotia got in onto it. And like, I don't know whether, is that the banks that the province is dealing with for their loans? Because, but if it would be back to the Bank of Canada as the prime lender, I mean, this is something that can't happen overnight, but it's just to put the seed in the political thought to start to initiate change over the upcoming years. And I'm going to summarize that. One more thing is, on each of these points, when you bring in a plan, how are you measuring the success? I mean, they're great ideas, but in every system you have to have some type of way of measuring to know how well it's doing. You know, what points, can we expect of the public to get some kind of feedback to say, is this working or is this not working? Because you start out with a theoretical model, and the problem is with all these decisions, there's so much information that we don't have, or we have incomplete information to come up with that perfect theory that's going to solve everything. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hearing me out. Thank you, Mr. Malone.
So one of the most important measurement will be when we get to a balanced budget, for sure. And so that's just my first reaction. The other thing is that I think you're right. I mean, governments over the years, doesn't matter who was in government, it's just the way it is. There's a program created. Another issue comes up, we get a new program. Another issue comes up, we get a new program. We don't always evaluate if the success of the previous program is still needed. And so that's important, and it needs to be some, what we call KPI. We need to have some measurements about success, so completely agree. Next.
Just in closing, you mentioned about the meetings with...
I don't have a birthday party to go to.
Happy birthday. Just quickly, on the meeting of the stakeholders, the public should be also invited to that, because we're stakeholders in this economy. It's not only business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. I didn't hear that. What's that? No, just.
How come the poorest of the poor does not qualify for income assistance in these rentals? If you were poor and didn't have license to rent together, if you were living in the streets in Fredericton, you walk into social services, they would say, sorry, we cannot help you until you go get an apartment. But if you're homeless and don't have no money, how are you going to have an apartment? But in the Canadian Constitution, it says every single Canadian is entitled to basic needs, no matter where you reside.
Okay, next.
I'm Marty Forsyth.